Hello, climate warriors. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Climate Network with me, Deepsha Dhal. I'm so happy that I could convince my guest, this particular guest, to enter into a studio to share his journey with us. The reluctant storyteller, the full-time volunteer and literary buff, Mr. Sujit Mahapatra, founder of Bakul Foundation and my first ever mentor in life. Welcome, Sujit. So, how would you like to describe yourself, Sujit?
Well, I always take pride in introducing myself as a volunteer. A volunteer first, everything else later. There are times, of course, when, people ask me, what is your role in Bakul, and they use the terms founder and secretary or whatever. But a movement does not have a founder, right? So I am a volunteer there. So what I do is, I often use this line for myself. I call myself a volunteer by profession because that's what I do full time, and an academic by hobby. So it's paradoxical. Normally it is an academic by profession, and volunteering is a hobby for most people. I don't earn from it, but then that's something that I profess, something that I do full time. So nothing less than a profession for me.
Sujit, you mentioned this beautiful sentence that Bakul is not an organization, it's an idea. And it's not about a Sujit or a Deepsha, but it's about every individual small contribution. So what can a Sujit or a Deepsha do for Bakul Foundation or this idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's not about Bakul again, as I said, I don't think anyone should be working for the organization. They should be working for the idea that Bakul is working on, and that is something I would really hope. See, initially it was a big question, all these are wonderful ideas, but what do you do?
Could you tell us a few of your ideas in the beginning?
Yeah. So the first questions were what to do, how to start. And we thought, okay, maybe some of us could go and teach, but then maybe we would be the best teachers. But how is that making ordinary people feel that they have brought about change? It was about a Sujit bringing about change. So that is when we thought, that, okay, we will ask people to donate books to set up a library. So the library initiative is one of the major, flagship programs of Bakul. But then the next big challenge was what else? Is it only library? Okay, we understand donating books. And we were very passionate to do things about the environment. Okay. And 2009, there were all these trees that were cut down in Bhubaneswar for road widening, and it was shocking. A lot of volunteers said that, let's do something. But then there was this question of, okay, what could we do? And, because most young people with us, they have exams after a month, they have other engagements. So there was obviously a challenge of consistency, not I would say of intent or interest, but, there are challenges, right? And that is when we thought, of course, there was a possibility that maybe we could plant 1 tree or 10 trees or whatever. But then we decided to be ambitious. Okay, we thought, and not just ambitious, because we wanted big change to happen. Right. And so we thought, okay, what can, instead of just doing a smaller version of what the government was doing or some corporate was doing, can we do something which was very important, but which was not happening? And that is when we realized that a lot of people were planting trees and then forgetting about them. Okay. And we realized that the problem really is not about plantation. The problem is we do not have a personal connect with trees. And that is how we started what we call the My Tree campaign. The tree becoming personal once again. I remember I was inspired by the ad of HP, the computer becoming personal once again. The personal computer. So similarly, the tree being personal once again. Okay. And it was personal, right? We had a personal connection with trees. And we thought, if trees can be brought back as part of culture and cultural practices, because if it becomes a part of the culture, then it automatically happens. It is not an event that you do and forget about it. It's something that you put value to. And it is a whole community that attaches value to it. So that's how we started the My Tree campaign. And we realized that a very important part of the culture is gifting culture. Right? Gifting practice is a very important, significant cultural practice. And anything that you gift in any culture shows the value that the community attaches to the gift. And as a person receiving the gift, if I value either the gift or the person giving the gift, I will take care of it.
Were you trying to create a cultural practice, or were you trying to bring in a behavioral change as to how people look at plants and trees?
Behavioral change becomes a cultural change, right? Behavioral change is an individual level. But when the behavior change happens at a community level, that's called a cultural change, right? See, for example, let's say moving from a dantakathi to a toothbrush is a behavioral change. At the same time, it is a cultural thing that we are now using a toothbrush instead of a dantun, right? Many cultures don't use a jibochela, a tongue cleaner, but we do. So that's a cultural practice, right? And when it becomes, for example, we don't think about brushing our teeth in the morning. That's already become culturally ingrained, right? So it's the same way with trees. We thought, for example, if I'm any significant event in a person's life, why not associate a tree plantation or a tree gifting with it, whether it is a birthday, whether it is anything, right? So that's how the My Tree campaign started.
How did you get people to be a part of this campaign? Because it
Okay.
says My Tree.
That's right. So we did many things. See, a very interesting thing I will tell you is, which is intrinsic to the Bakul way of doing things, and that is we try and ensure that we do not fall into the trap of instruction overdose. Unfortunately, our
Very
society
interesting.
suffers from instruction overdose. There's so much of do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. It just goes through one ear and goes out of the other.
Correct.
So, in fact, when we started the My Tree campaign, one of our volunteers said, let's have the slogan, Abe sala gocha laga. Abe sala ped laga. The reason, plant a tree, save the world. These are
Don't
all
be preachy.
cliches. No, not just preachy. It's also become cliches, And that is, so how do you bring creativity into it? And that is when we thought, just think about the act of gifting a plant. If I gift you a plant on your birthday without any words being spoken, okay, the message goes. I say nothing. I just the act of gifting a plant tells more about the importance of planting trees than any words can. And maybe someone sees it and just likes the idea. Wow, that's a cool idea. I can do it.
I remember being a part of the My Tree campaign the first year, I think 2009-10. And we were celebrating fake birthdays in Cafe Coffee Day because that was the only cafe that was there. What we used to do was get a group of volunteers to go and pretend to have a birthday party where we gift the birthday boy or birthday girl sapling, and then the volunteer used to go around the cafe getting blessings for the sapling from all the coffee connoisseurs sitting in CCD having their cup of coffee. And it was hilarious because people would then come up to us and have photo ops. And then we didn't have Instagram, or it was Orkut and Facebook, right? And I think that was a beautiful way of disseminating the information.
Yeah, in fact, so we got inspired. See, we always think about how do you pass the message, without being preachy, without instruction overdose. So there was a concept that we had. So Bakul has been a platform for experimenting a lot of ideas. So one of the ideas that we had experimented earlier was a concept called invisible theater, where you do theater, but no one knows that it is theater. So that is how the fake, because we realize, okay, we want people to feel, the objective of the My Tree campaign when we started was how to plant this idea in people's minds that when you have to give a gift, you can think of a tree. For example, does a thought come when I have to think of a gift, when I think of a gift for anyone? Let's say it's your birthday and I'm thinking about what do I give Deepsha? Does a thought come that I can also gift a tree? And so we thought, okay, how many birthdays in which we can actually do that? And if we have volunteers, so we thought, okay, whenever we go out, we anyway hang out, why don't we use it as an opportunity to create awareness? Right. But then in most other cases, we didn't actually do that, because when you go around asking people to bless the plant, somewhere they understand that, okay, this is part of a campaign. Right. So how it worked in most other cases is just do it and come out and forget it, act as if nothing else happened. So what happens is then you're normalizing the act of gifting a plant. But the moment in a public space, like we've done it in movie theaters also during the intermission.
Right.
Okay, so the moment you gift a plant and you say happy birthday and do a little photo shoot, which is a normal thing in a birthday celebration, you're automatically getting attention of everyone around. They see that a birthday is being celebrated and a tree is being gifted.
You mentioned it was a non-verbal movement or a campaign. What did you do to make it verbal and visually verbal at that?
See, of course, the gifting of plant was the non-verbal act. What I said. Not that there was no verbalism or no verbalizing, because there are times when you have to talk about it, talk about the idea. And then we were, struggling with the idea of how do we talk about it without being preachy, because there was so much of talk that was happening. And children are a major constituency that we work with, right? So that is when someone said that, why don't we think of a green superhero? Okay. Because a Sujit or a Deepsha going and telling children would seem like talk. But what if there is a superhero that comes and, tickles the imagination of the children and talks about these things, right?
All hail Dedi Loku, the tree man.
That's right. So that is when we thought about this green superhero which we initially called the tree man. Right. And the tree man, it was a very simple idea. We thought, we were very clear from the beginning that, remember the idea of Bakul was how every individual can be the agent of change. So the legend of Dedi Loku was also that the spirit of Dedi Loku enters into different people.
For everybody who do not know Dedi Loku, could you please explain what Dedi Loku means? What is it? Who is it?
Yeah. So we started it as Tree Man, and we were clear that, the Tree Man, we didn't want the name Tree Man because we wanted the green superhero to be gender neutral. Okay. And we felt that the spirit of Dedi, the green superhero can enter into different people. So there was this festival called Sargi Full. You have been a part of it. The Tribal Children's Festival organized by the government, where we conduct lots of workshops. So there was a creative writing workshop soon after the My Tree campaign started in 2010. And we did a workshop to create stories on this green superhero. And we said, okay, we have to give a name. And we wanted a local name, a name in Odia. But all the names that we were coming up with sounded very... they were not cool, Brukhya Manaba, Gotcha Manisa. We didn't like it. Now, these were tribal children from different communities. And one of the girls, she came up with this name called Dedi Loku. Okay, which means tree man in the Kui language, the language spoken by the Kondhas. Okay. And then the first question I remember I had was, does Loku necessarily mean a man? And she said, no, it is like Loko. Right. So it can mean man, it can mean woman. I said, perfect. And it was so cool and, funky. So that's how the name Dedi Loku stuck on.
I mean, my favorite takeaway from the last 15 years of being a Bakul volunteer is that one day and that one event when I was Dedi Loku. And nobody recognized me, but they recognized me as obviously Dedi Loku. Happiest day of my life.
Yeah, that's the idea. Because if people recognize you as Deepsha, then it's failed. So when you are the superhero, you are the superhero. I remember it. It reminds me of Odissi dance, Sujit Mahapatra dancing, where or his disciples dancing. When someone would become Krishna, dance as Krishna, before the dance, Kelu sir would go and actually touch their feet and say that, for me, you are not Deepsha the dancer anymore. You are Lord Krishna. So it is like that. You become the superhero.
You imbibe it. And my biggest regret is I've never been Dedi Loku again.
Yeah, well, who knows? You don't need to do much more for the spirit of Dedi Loku to enter into you again.
I hope this podcast is enough for Dedi Loku to bless me with the spirit of Dedi Loku.
Who knows? Maybe.
Sujit, Dedi Loku and the My Tree campaign has existed for about 15 years now. You started in 2009. What is the status today? What are you doing to keep up that spirit? What are you doing for the X factor?
Well, do they still call it the X factor? I know.
I don't know. I'm old school. I'm sorry. I'm old school.
Right. See, interesting, when we started the My Tree campaign, most people didn't understand. Most people don't understand most of the things that Bakul starts, and they always say that it's not going to work, whether it is volunteerism or it's the My Tree campaign. So that time, the entire discourse was on plantation. So when we started talking about a subculture around trees, cultural practices, okay, most people thought, what are you talking about? Like, you're talking about tree plantation, right? We said, we are talking about tree plantation, but we're not talking about tree plantation the way you are thinking it to be, right?
The
And we are
traditional
talking
way.
about, and we are talking about it being linked to a person's life, whether it is planting a tree in the memory of my beloved grandmother who passed away, or gifting a tree at the birth of a child, or whatever. So now that was something that people didn't understand. But now if you see, I feel very proud about it, that 15 years back, people didn't understand what we are talking about, but we have been able to change the discourse now. Now the entire discourse has shifted from plantation to talking about cultural practices, about trees. Now, if you see, in most events, bouquets have been replaced with tree gifts, saplings. So that is a significant change, which was not there earlier. I mean, initially, I remember when I would go and gift trees, some people would feel embarrassed, what will people think? But the more you see people gifting trees, the more normalized it becomes. You don't think people are going to judge you, rather it's become the thing to do. But if you look at it, what has happened in these 15 years is that a lot of gifting of trees happens, but it is still not personal. It is still more on stage that happens. Like, it's a way of saying that, you stand for the environment. So it's a public posturing, but it is not part of the life as much. So one of the things, again, of course, that I feel very proud of is that we had this idea to have a memorial avenue,
Right.
Like I just mentioned that, a tree planted in the memory of someone. And I remember many years back, I had discussed with the forest secretary, and he loved the idea. So he started something called Smriti One, which has become a big success.
Correct.
On the outskirts of Bhubaneswar, which is a memorial garden. So things like that have happened. So there has been a lot of people who have been following our campaign credit us. They tell us that, Sujit, you were talking about it when no one else was, and you started this, and look where it has come. But at the same time, we feel that this year, being the 15th year, we are trying to give it a lot more push. So one of the things that we are doing is, now we are trying to talk about plantation, but we are trying to talk about plantation in a different way. And we are saying, we are talking about parenting a plant.
Very
So we are trying to,
interesting.
so one was,
Very
of course,
interesting.
gifting of plants. So that campaign is going on. And we are now, doing it throughout the year, connecting it with different other events that happen, cultural events where gifting anyway happens. We just had Raksha Bandhan, where we said, gift a plant.
I saw the pictures and the videos.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, then we said parenting a plant. And as parenting a plant, so the whole focus we are shifting. We did a adopt a tree campaign, and we have planned to do it every year, where either you adopt, you parent a plant directly at home or wherever your own space, or you can adopt a plant and, be a foster parent. Okay. So that is something that we planted over 300 trees, and we found foster parents for them. At the same time, we found caregivers, local caregivers who will take care of the plants.
Very nice. That solves your taking care of the plant.
Exactly. So just as you adopt a child, there are local caregivers and there are foster parents. The same policy here with trees. And what is interesting is a lot of people planted trees there for their beloved, for the love to grow.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day is different.
You've been
Of
gifting
course,
rose plants,
that is there. I mean, we say, why gift only a rose? Gift a rose.
Correct.
Gift a rose plant, right?
I remember the tagline, and we laughing about it, saying, there are too many roses in this rose sentence.
But you know what? When we started this campaign in 2009, since you talked about the Valentine's Day, the cost of a rose plant with a rose was actually less
Cheaper.
than the cost of a cut rose. So it was like you cut the rose from the tree, from the plant, and the cost increases but now that has changed, But yes, coming back to this, so we had the adopt a tree, the parent a plant campaign. In the 15 years, one occasion in which gifting, if a gift is given, and have seen a 99% success, that is gifting a tree on the birth of a child. Like in Odisha, we have this concept of Ekoisia, or the first birthday. If I've gifted a tree, whether they have space or not. And by tree, by the way, I'm not talking about a portable plant. I'm talking about a tree growing plant, something that grows up to be a large tree. If I've gifted to anyone, whether they have space or not, I have always seen that that tree has been planted and nurtured because there's an association with the child. That is why this month, in August, we are starting the Twin Tree campaign.
Oh, wow. What is that?
So the idea is that we have already talked to Capital Hospital, right? And so when there's a newborn baby, we will go and gift a tree to the parents of the newborn baby and tell them that this tree is now the twin of your child, and they grow up together.
Oh, wow.
And if we can establish that, then that could be a cultural change. So that is something that we are doing now. Very recently also, we had this big campaign. We just got done with Rakhi, and we had this campaign called My Tree Bandhan. So a lot of people have been tying Rakhis to trees. Okay. But then remember, it is always a few people like a Sujit and a Deepsha going and tying Rakhis to trees. But that's not the idea of Bakul. Remember what I said. Correct. The idea is how can we do what others can do. So we made an appeal to people, children in particular, right? Said that let's celebrate My Tree Bandhan. And hundreds of children have been sending us photos and videos of tying Rakhis to trees and plants at home or in their vicinity. And that is important.
Oh, wow. So what would you say was the tipping point for Bakul? When the magic moment when ideas or trends or social behaviors cross that threshold or that tip and spreads like wildfire. I believe it's now a wildfire. You have hundreds of stories about My Tree campaign being shared by non-volunteers as well as volunteers. So what was that tipping point for you and Bakul?
No, I would say that we have not reached the tipping point yet. Because the moment we reach the tipping point, I think we can then rest assured that we don't need to pursue it anymore. Because once it crosses the tipping point, it acquires a scale of its own, life of its own.
Yeah.
So in fact, it's interesting you use this phrase because from the beginning of the My Tree campaign, that is what I keep telling our volunteers, that we need to keep pushing it, keep finding creative ways of communicating this till we reach that tipping point. We just have to push it. And I think maybe we have come halfway. Okay. But a little, because see, as I said,
are you being too hard on yourself or are you being honest?
I'm being honest. See, as I said, if we have reached the tipping point, I will feel that we need to move to some other cause.
From whatever you have described, My Tree campaign seems like a very creative way of going forward with a movement or a campaign. Could you tell us a few more examples of how you have used creativity in your campaigns?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned this because that's very core to our way of doing things. I keep talking about the Bakul way of doing things. Because remember a point that I mentioned earlier, very important, which informs all our strategies. And that is that our society suffers from instruction overdose. So it's a question of, how do you attract attention? How do you get people to notice and to engage with what you're doing? That is the most important thing, right? Because I talk to people, most people, they say, okay, what do you do? They say, we do rallies. So I say, okay, has it ever happened that you've been on a road and you've seen some other people doing a rally and it has impacted you? And they said, no. So then I asked, well, if no other rally has impacted you, why would your rally impact others? So it becomes a lot of work that we do to create change. It becomes a checklist activity, right? It's not really, doesn't really have an impact. So that is how we start thinking, what can we do? So we thought that, okay, let us just make trees easily available to people and talk about. So, like I mentioned, Dedi Loku was a way of getting an opportunity to talk to people, but children. So we thought about how can we talk to adults about trees.
Are you talking about Tree for Free?
Yeah, in fact. So that was an excuse. It was an excuse.
Absolutely fun event.
Absolutely.
Every single time.
Now, most people, of course, would be listening, would be thinking that, okay, what is fun about a tree for free? So what we used to do is go around in a Sogadagadi, a bullock cart in the middle of the city, Bhubaneswar, with young people, teenagers, college students on the bullock cart and around it shouting "Gotcha Naba Gotcha" and giving away trees for free. But the tree for free was an excuse. People used to come wanting trees, but then when our volunteers engaged with them, they talked about the importance of gifting trees, about cultural practice of how they can plant a tree on the birthday or gift a tree, etc., etc. So we've been using mechanisms like this, getting attention. So someone asked me that, what is your opinion about theatre? I said, we don't necessarily have to do a theatre which has an act 1 or a scene 1 and a scene 2 on stage.
Or like a Nukkad Natak at that.
See, again, the problem with the Nukkad Natak is we have done Nukkad Nataks, but then, what happens in a place like Bhubaneswar is, if you do a Nukkad Natak anywhere, you will do for a minimum of 10 minutes,
Right.
Around 10 minutes, let's say. But unfortunately, most people who see more than 3 minutes are actually the actors and their friends.
That's true.
And that is the unfortunate part. And that is why, we use things like the bullock cart, the show. I'll tell you, since you mentioned Nukkad Natak, we wanted to do something on World Water Day. And this goes back to 2013 for the first time, I remember. We wanted people in Bhubaneswar to just think that water is a concern. Because we are very pampered. We lead
Right.
pampered lives. We don't ever think that water is an issue. And it is such a big issue. Right? So we thought, okay, if we do a Nukkad Natak, it will only be a few people. Because see, the problem with our society is, hum sab janta hai. The
Right.
moment you figure out what's happening, you lose interest. So the challenge here is, how long can you engage them till they have figured out what is happening?
Basically, keep them curious.
Exactly. So that is when we decided, we did something which some people would call a living theatre. It was not a Nukkad Natak, but very theatrical and very interesting. We hired an ambulance, and that was a time in Bhubaneswar, the most happening place in terms of crowds was the place around the Inox, the first Inox in Shahid Nagar. Because you had the Shahid Nagar market and you had the mall and the crowd there. We hired an ambulance, and the ambulance at 5 o'clock in the evening, when it was a peak time and crowded and people can see, it stopped with all the sirens wailing in front of the theatre. And everyone I could see, hundreds of people, whoever I could see, everyone was glued to what is happening. Why did an ambulance stop? It's not a hospital, right? And then a stretcher came out and there were people wailing. And people were trying to figure out what is happening. By the time they figured out that, we had this huge sculpture, a drop of water, which was carried on the stretcher. By the time people figured out that, okay, people are mourning the death of water, the scene changed.
So water died.
Water died. But remember, by the time people understood that water has died, okay, it is this, everyone expected us to do some bhashanbazi. And they asked, okay, what are you going to speak? But we changed the scene. Then it became a memorial service. So people, okay, what is happening now? Okay, so there was a photo with mala and all. And, people come and pay respects.
So a
it was like
memorial service for water.
a memorial service for water. Right? So you had the funeral procession, cut, memorial service. By the time people figured out that it was a memorial service for water, then we had the post-mortem report. So everyone, you were also one of them, I remember, we had the printouts, okay, we didn't, where we talked about, important, shocking fact sheets we had on, how many people die because of water sanitation
Hard-hitting
diseases.
facts.
Yeah, hard-hitting facts, we had that. And then we had something called Jal Bandhan. Like you have Raksha Bandhan, where the sister ties a Rakhi to the brother who promises to protect her. So we had Jal Bandhan. So you go and tie a blue Rakhi to someone, and that person, promises to save water. And then that person ties a Rakhi to someone else.
The chain effect.
In fact, though, we were repeating this activity. We had initially done this activity in a village as a water sanitation project.
I mean, I understand when you say water memorial in an urban setting, yeah, it's hilarious, it's catchy, it's quirky. But how do you do like a skit in a village, in a rural setting where you're there to teach about water and sanitation? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's not really a challenge that in villages because, see, nature is much more a part of life of people in villages than it is in the city, right? We are disconnected. I mean, for us, water is something which comes from the tap. You ask a lot of young people. But then for villagers, water source would be the nearby stream. They may have piped water, but they also have a nearby stream which they use.
You can see the point of origin.
You can see the point of origin or whatever, right? So, but then they have other challenges. There are other challenges, things that we take for granted here. For example, we worked in Ganjam, a district which is notorious for open defecation. Okay, there is someone, Joe Madiath, who founded Gram Vikas, who was a partner, and he has this wonderful saying. He says that a very simple thing. People have this belief: cover the face and bear the base. So open defecation on the roadside, and people just forgetting. Okay, no one sees us, so they don't know who we are, right? And here, when we worked with Gram Vikas and we worked with One Drop, which is the sister concern of Cirque du Soleil, which is, so One Drop, because of its...
is it the Canada-based organization?
Yeah. So Cirque du Soleil, you would know, is the largest circus in the world. And because it believes in the modern circus, which is spectacular, so One Drop believes in arts-based approach to creating awareness.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I remember 2010-11, when we were very young, very little we had done. We didn't even have a website. They discovered us. So I have to give hats off to them, because they were looking for partners who believe in change through the arts. I don't know. It's their good work that got them to us.
Very interesting.
But something, and it was a great connect. Till then we had not done a funded project. It was a great connect because we believe in, as I was suggesting to you earlier, a lot of attempts at change fail because there's no creativity in the campaign, right? And we always say that an image speaks more than 1,000 words, but we don't engage with images. And remember, again, a point that I just made, that you can engage people till you think that, till they have figured out what you're doing.
Right.
Right. So they gave us a simple brief. We want 100% of a village to move to toilets from open defecation. So an entire village,
And this was one village or multiple?
There were multiple villages, See, the difference between an individual household building a toilet and a village being open defecation free. So if a village is to be open defecation free, that means everyone has to use toilets. Right? And because the germs are still there if some people are defecating in the open. And they gave us that brief. And I must give it to them that they agreed to a very radical approach. Okay, radical approach because, in Europe or in the West, they're used to a very structured thing. You know exactly what is going to happen. And we came up with a very organic approach. We said, we will have this very old world methodology, and that's a great strategy that worked. We said, we will not educate the villagers on water and sanitation. That's important to our approach. See, remember the line I said earlier, it is not about a Sujit and a Deepsha trying to create change. So we said, we will use the villagers to educate others. Right. So that's an important...
Who was educating the villagers?
See, if I bring you on board to educate others, you will automatically get educated. But what happens is, in most attempts at creating awareness, we seem to be the agents and they are the passive subjects.
Correct.
So we wanted to break that, because that does not work.
So this is more like a partnership or a collaboration.
Exactly. No, it is like you're co-opting them. Like we mobilize volunteers, we are mobilizing the villages. So, when initially we went to the village and there would be the intermediary, the host organization would go and introduce us as, okay, they have come from the city, they will tell us, our problem. So we would just go and say, no, that is not what. See, we don't know anything about the problems of your village. You know that. We are just concerned about water and sanitation. And we want to know what are your concerns, and we will be here to help you address those concerns. So we didn't create any change. We didn't create any awareness. What we did was, shall we use art? Shall we do a painting to do this? Who is interested? Come on, join us. Okay. We said, we want to create stories. Who is interested in working with us to create a story? Right? And what we did, most people, what they do is they go to the village, do an awareness project and return. We didn't do that. We stayed in the village for 6 days. In each village, we stayed for 6 days. We had a library there. Now you would say, what does a library have to do with awareness on water and sanitation? Trust. So the problem with a lot of interventions is they're so narrow. You want to achieve water sanitation, you talk only water sanitation. What is
You
important?
created a sense of ownership.
No, see, an important point I'll add here. This is something I keep repeating. Each of us has things that we know we should change. Okay. And there is no dearth of people who keep telling us, change this. Let's say smoking. Let's say someone smokes and everyone is always telling that person. Now, the person, what happens? You instruction overdose, you listen through one ear, it goes out through the other. You only allow a person to change you if you trust the intentions of that person. So what is most important in a lot of attempts at creating awareness in villages is, do they trust you? Do they trust your intentions? So what happens, it's a wonderful case of design thinking. You have a library there. People trust, okay, they are here for an agenda. They have an agenda, but they're here for us. They want children to read. And everyone values education. Right.
Absolutely.
And not only that, and every day in the evening, we would screen films. Okay.
Oh, very interesting. On what?
On water sanitation. Okay. And generally, initially, we also started with feature films. Now, what would happen is, see, in a village again, if you go and ask in a village, where do we screen? We want to screen a film. Where do we screen? Typically, the space that they will suggest, everyone will say, is an upper caste dominant space. That is where all the jatras, all the natakas, everything happen. But since we were there for 6 days, every day we could go to a different sahi, to a different colony. Now, when you do a film screening, and Ganjam, by the way, is close to Andhra Pradesh, okay, the impact of cinema is huge. They don't have theaters. So on a big screen, you show a film, okay, in the other sahi, where nothing ever happens, automatically you're on their side. They're there with you. They are open about what are the real problems. Okay, and not only that, we had a photographer. So it was like a caravan that went in. There was a photographer, there was a filmmaker, there was an artist. But we never told one drop that what we're going to come out with. Okay, that was very organic. Okay, now when there was a film screening, now we also showed photos. So people loved seeing their own photos on the screen. So the film screening or the photo and the excuse, so once you have the screen, you can show the photos also. That got all the people together. So, and at the end, there was a premiere in which a film shot in the village was screened. So it is a case of the village, it was like a village festival.
Very interesting.
For the 6 days.
And did you have follow-ups as well to see whether the whatever you had started was being retained?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there was a host organization. Because, see, we didn't go by ourselves. There was a host organization already working, and they identified the most difficult villages where they were having problems in mobilizing people. See, like, I'll give an example. There was this particular village where this old man just refused. He said, if everyone else does toilets, I will not do toilets, because they had reported me to the police for some forest crime. And I went to jail because of that. So I am not with the others. So I just went and talked to him. And I said, that, you are like my grandfather, and I have seen how my grandfather, forget the rest of them. Okay. You needed more than the others because
of your age.
Because of your age. And I talked about my grandfather, and suddenly he hallucinated. And he said that, yes, I remember I have been to your house. I had gone to Bhubaneswar.
Oh,
and I let him believe that.
No, that's...
And when I was leaving, you won't believe it, he had tomatoes and other vegetables from his farm, from his garden, which he gave to me. So I knew that now whether others do it or not, he is definitely going to do it. So it was at that intimate and close level.
So was it just the village elders who were refusing, or did you see like a resistance from the rest of the community? I understand they loved the idea of a festival, of painting together or watching movies. But was there resistance from the community itself?
No. See, everyone wanted it. See, there were other challenges. See, there would be some people who don't have the resources for the toilets. Right.
So everybody was willing for the change. There was nobody to bring in the knowledge or the
more
learnings.
or less they understood. They see it's a question of you have to motivate them. See, everyone knows the importance of this. See, behavior change is not about, it is just about you being too casual about it. You're not doing anything about it. It is not that you don't know that you're supposed to do it, right? But very important thing is we attach their own pride to this. And a very important point I'll tell you. When we make the villagers the ambassadors of the water sanitation project, not we becoming the ambassadors, but we being catalysts and they being the ambassadors, then we used to tell them, well, you are saying all this now, you have to walk the talk. Right?
Absolutely.
So the important point is, so the more you create ambassadors of something, see, anyone who becomes an ambassador, like Deepsha, if the spirit of Dedi Loku has entered Deepsha, I'm sure Deepsha before being Dedi Loku and after being Dedi Loku is changed.
Absolutely.
You will feel conscious that I have the spirit of Dedi Loku was in me. I have to embody that spirit in some way.
Correct. Absolutely correct. I ensured that our campus had dustbins after I had become Dedi Loku. So it was a huge university with 22 colleges and there were dustbins every 100 meters. And that was installed because of
Great.
Dedi Loku. Do I get brownie points, Dedi Loku? Am I getting the spirit?
Well, I'm not Dedi Loku. I'll pass on the
I'm
information.
just asking Dedi Loku in general, not you.
Yeah.
Okay. I genuinely believe that Bakul not just creates change, but also creates a change within. Personally, as a volunteer, when I started, I was in school. And today, who I am, what I am, and my perspectives, my ideologies are very much influenced by Bakul. Not just the idea of Bakul, but the volunteers I've met at Bakul. You gave us a platform, the way I see it, to explore our creativity and our ideas. And I think Bakul has made each and every volunteer a leader in itself, or herself, or himself. Was it by design? Because there's a lot of design thinking going around now.
Well, you know how we took the name Bakul, right? And why we took the name Bakul.
Yes.
I mean, the Bakul Van Vidyalaya, Bakula Vana Vidyalaya, the school in a grove of Bakul trees started by Gopindu Das, the Gandhi of Odisha. You know, the two reasons why we took the name. One was a school that could start in a Bakul Van or in a Van is a symbol of what can happen with minimal resources. You don't need lakhs of rupees to start a school. Two, the idea behind the school was not just to teach children, but to create the future leaders of the state. And that is what we were trying to do with our volunteers. Right? See, the thing becomes exponential. You know, it becomes a movement, not with a few people leading it, but when each of the persons who becomes a part of it becomes a leader by himself or herself. Right? So, and I always say that Bakul is a great place for leadership because we are very ambitious, like we are trying to create cultural change. Like everything, you know, that we do is very ambitious, like creating a cultural change around volunteerism, creating a cultural change around relationship with trees, creating a cultural change around reading, you know, and cultural change can only happen through a movement, right? And with hundreds, thousands of people coming together, lakhs of people coming together. So we are very ambitious. We have wonderful opportunities and there is no one to lead. So you're thrust into leadership, you know, and the thing about Bakul is it is up to you. You can be as big a leader as you want to be because of the way we are doing things, there's a lot of goodwill. Everyone knows us, you know, so access is not a problem for us. The problem is we are as good as the leaders with us. You know, I think you are a wonderful example of that. See, you have been with Bakul for so many years and that is what, you know, we can do much more things when we have people like you who've been associated with us for a long time. Then 3 years back when we started YCLAP, the Young Climate Leaders Action Project, right? The idea was to create climate leaders and not just, but here it was a conscious attempt, which we collaborated with the US consulate, that it is not just that these young people that we are selecting will be working on Bakul projects, like the My Tree campaign or the water sanitation project. We wanted them to, you know, go to the next level, develop their leadership where they can initiate and lead their own action projects. But then we needed mentors. Now, because you were there, you have been involved with us, because we could find mentors, we could have them. And just imagine with the kind of people who were there, our volunteers and with your mentorship, right? when the Climate Action Champions Network happened at a
Absolutely.
South Asian level. 3 of the 25 people from India, 3 of the 100 from all the countries are Bakul volunteers.
Absolutely agreed.
Right. So that's a wonderful example of that. I think the great thing is not just that they're working on environment. I see a lot of Bakul volunteers starting enterprises of their own. Because I remember, you were one of the founder members of Broken Scooter, and I remember your co-founder actually told me this line that when you guys started Broken Scooter, he said, you made it possible that, things can happen with minimal resources, that you have the idea, you can do it. So I think I feel proud about it.
21 when we went into the venture. So you start young.
Yeah.
In Bakul, you start young.
Yeah, because you are leading a campaign, you are leading
Absolutely.
things, and you learn how
Day
things
of
can
service,
happen.
we were just 18 when we did International Day of Service with 30 cities.
Exactly. And people would think that, okay, it is something which came from the UN or something, but
No.
it's just something that we created by ourselves.
And we did it in a month.
Exactly. So I think the Broken Scooter happened just after the first time we did the International
We
Day of
believed in
Service.
ourselves.
Exactly.
I think,
and you believe that you can change the world.
That's true. That's true. It gives you a self of, delusional confidence that you are here to make a difference. If not us, who? If not now, when?
That's right. In fact, when we started Bakul, that initial mailer, there was a mailer with which we started, and there was this line. It is not original, it has been used for centuries. But look at the arrogance of this statement, which I love. It's a belief that you can change the world, and a belief that you have to do it. Because, see, I always tell our volunteers, if it is so difficult to bring about change, it is all the more reason that we are doing it. There has been no dearth of people in the world trying to bring about change, but there's a big dearth of people who have persisted. And if we don't do it, who will do it? If it has waited for us to do it, that means it is all the more necessary that we do it. And if we don't do it now, and I think climate change is the best example of that. If not now, when? If not us,